Over the past 3 or 4 years, I've seen a real transformation in my blues playing. Not necessarily in the mechanical sense of how I play, but in my understanding of what to play and when. Essentially, I've gone from the cliche stuck in the minor pentatonic guy to someone with a much broader outlook, and to the point where now I can actually teach some of this stuff here on YouTube. So in this video, I want to share with you the key concepts that really help me improve, and I hope they can help you too. So this is a slightly longer video than usual, but if you watch to the end, I promise there's so much great info coming up. And for anyone that's a full access member on my Patreon, you can download my PDF mini course that accompanies this video, together with all the tabs for the solos and scales you're about to see. Now the starting point for most of us in blues is the minor pentatonic, and here it is in A minor. And I'll assume most of us are already familiar with this, but then to turn this into the blues scale, we simply add one note, the blue note, a flat 5. In the case of A minor, that's an E flat, so let's go through. We can find an E flat there at the 6th fret on the A string, so let's add that in. Carry on up the scale, and then again here, an E flat at the 8th fret of the G string, add that one on. And then complete the scale as normal. Now these blue notes, these E flats, really bring out that instant blues vibe, as you can hear there. So that's the scale we're focusing on. The first advice I want to give is find your licks. By this I mean find ideas which really connect with you on a musical level and commit to them as cornerstones of your playing. So what you're about to see is some snippets of 3 tracks, all in different keys, different tempos and different feel, but the source material for the guitar solos is actually identical. So let me explain a little of what you just saw there. Everything was based on just 3 licks. The first lick was this. I won't go through these in massive detail because I'll put the tab up, but I was bending up on the G string, classic bends there, and then letting these chord tones ring out together on the B and high E strings, and then ending with the big bend up to the root note on the 8th fret of the B string there. Now the great thing with this, that first part I can play as many times as I need before going into that last bend, and this gives me loads of flexibility. Then the second lick was this. So this time I'm using some double stops, playing 2 notes at once, something we'll talk about more later, but here I want to be able to play these 2 notes at the 5th and 8th frets on the B string from our scale shape at the same time. Obviously we can't do that, so I'm just moving this note at the 5th fret here on the B string up to the 9th fret on the G string instead, which allows me to play it together with that note at the 8th fret on the B string for a really bluesy sounding double stop. Sounds great, sliding into it. So then I'm back into the scale position there, another double stop, 5 and 5 on the G and B strings with a little push up there for extra blues, and then resolving back to our root note of A there at the 7th fret on the D string. Once again here though, that first bit I can play as many times as I like to give me a bit of rhythmic flexibility. Like so. And then the third lick. So this is really just a repeating 3-note pattern where I'm using this blue note here at the 6th fret on the A string, then hammer on to the 7th fret and then 5th fret on the G string, playing that as a triplet, 1, 2, 3. Can go around that as many times as I like, and then sticking another couple of notes on the end just as a kind of get out. So just 3 licks for all those solos. finding some core licks like this and practicing them in various styles would give ourselves a great foundation to be confident when the time comes to solo. At least we'll have something that will sound good, and we can explore out from there, knowing that we have familiar ground to return to if things go awry. Next up, we need to get out of using just this one pentatonic position and start moving around the neck. Luckily, this is pretty easy when you know how. So now, instead of starting our A minor blues scale on the root note of A, here at the 5th fret, let's start our scale 2 frets below with this G, here at the 3rd fret. This is still going to be the A minor blues scale though. So let's make a 4-note box with 3 and 5, G and A on the low E string, and then 3 and 5, C and D on the A string. So we've got this 4-note box, 3, 5, 3, 5. Now this is what I call the primary pentatonic box, and this is really our home base, and we can get loads of licks from this. You know, that kind of thing. Now, to complete the full blues scale, we just need to add 2 more notes to this on the A string. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, our 4-note box, and then we come up 1 fret on the A string for an E flat, our blue note that we talked about before, and then up 1 fret again for an E to complete the scale. So our 4-note box, and then 2 notes directly above, and that's the full A minor blues scale. But the great thing here is now we can repeat this exact same pattern across the neck. So once we get to the end of it on the A string, we're perfectly placed to start again on the D string. So here we go from the 5th fret on the D string, we start again with a G, and then up to the 7th fret for the A, our root note, then up to the G string we get a C at the 5th, and D at the 7th. So there's our 4-note box again. And then the 2 notes above, E flat and E at the 8th and 9th on the G string. So now we have the exact same pattern, the exact same notes, but now an octave higher. So we've got it here on the low E and A strings, and then again here on the D and G strings, and then we can go up again to the B and high E strings. So starting at the 8th fret on the B, we've got our G, then up to the 10th for the A, and then onto the high E, C at the 8th, D at the 10th, so that's the 4-note box, and then the 2 notes above, E flat and E at the 11th and 12th frets. So now all together we've got 3 positions of this same pattern, starting with the low, in the middle, and then the high position. And now you can see how this starts to move us right across the neck. And of course, anything we do in one position, we can now easily do in the other positions. So this is a hugely powerful way to look at the blues scale. So here's a solo using this approach, and see how it gives me so much more range and fluidity across the neck. Now so far we've just been focusing on the minor blues scale, but as we advance in our blues playing, we want to be able to use both minor and major. So back to our original A minor blues scale pattern starting at the 5th fret. And all we need to do to turn this into the A major blues scale is simply move it down 3 frets, so now we're starting at the 2nd fret. And this is the A major blues scale, but you'll notice we're no longer starting on an A, but starting on a F sharp here. And this is because F sharp minor and A major share the exact same notes. They're known as relative minor and major. But this means we can't just play the exact same licks, but 3 frets down. We need to make a slight adjustment to account for where the root note of A now falls in the pattern. So in the A minor blues scale, we get our first A here, the first note of the pattern at the 5th fret on the low E. Well, we still get that same note when we play the major scale, starting at the 2nd fret, but now it's the 2nd note of our pattern, but we can still use it as a resolution point. So instead of playing a minor lick, maybe like this, landing on that A, we could play a major lick like that, landing on the same A, and I'm just rhythmically adjusting to make sure I hit that note on the right beat there. Now by using the major scale, we get a brighter sound. We can still add in the blue note for extra blues feel, but it's not quite as dark sounding. you hear that difference. Then we had an A here in our minor scale at the 7th fret on the D string. Now this A still occurs, but now it's here at the 2nd fret on the G string, the same note. So instead of a minor lick like this, I can maybe play a major lick like so. A similar kind of vibe, but a bit brighter, now landing on that same A, but the 2nd fret of the G string. And then again we get our A on the 5th fret on the high E, and maybe just something simple. I could land down onto that A in the minor scale, but then from the major scale maybe I want to land up to it like that as a really simple lick. Now in the solo you're about to hear, I'm going to alternate between major and minor each time the chord changes, so really listen out for that shift between the brighter and darker tonalities. Next up, let's look at some double stops, which simply means playing 2 notes at once. And in my mind, this is where you really start to sound like you know what you're doing. So there are 3 main intervals we can think of when playing double stops: thirds, fourths and sixths. And we want to think of all of these in terms of how they fit around the chords. So starting with the standard A bar chord here, let's just take the 2 notes on the G and B strings, the 6th and 5th frets, a C sharp and an E, which together make a third. Now to give this some movement, we can slide in chromatically from 1 fret below, like so. And then moving up the scale in thirds, we would then go to 7 on the G with 7 on the B, a D and an F sharp, another set of thirds. So we've got that so far. Then we can go up again to 9 on the G with 8 on the B, an E and a G, which we saw earlier. So we've got these different sets of thirds, like so, and putting them together opens up a lot of possibilities. Licks like so. Then back to our bar chord, and this time let's just take the 2 notes on the B and high E strings, an E and an A, together these make a fourth. Now with these it works great to slide up 2 frets from the 5th to the 7th and back down again, makes a really nice bright sound. That kind of thing. But then if we want to, we can go up again to the 8th, where we find some darker, bluesier sounding notes. And you get that kind of lick when you add those in. And then let's look at some 6ths, and this time we're taking the notes from the G and high E strings from our bar chord. So a C sharp and an A, which together make a 6th. Now when we play these, we just need to make sure we're muting this B string in between. Now from here, we can move up to 3 pairs together at 7 and 7, 8 and 8, and 9 and 9. So we've got the chord tones and then 3 pairs above it like that, which gives us licks like this kind of thing. You know, you instantly recognise that type of sound, and it's great for turnarounds and things like that. So we've got 3 types of double stops: thirds, fourths, and sixths. Now, all of these are based around the A chord here, but as the chords change, we can do exactly the same around whichever chord we're playing over. So once we get up to D, we can play our thirds like that, fourths like that, and sixths like that. So here's a solo based purely on these double stops, and hopefully you can hear things are starting to sound quite sophisticated now. moving on, and let's talk about something which is real life goals for blues and jazz musicians. That's playing the changes. Now this concept can seem scary, but I want to show you a fairly straightforward method using what I call the blues chord scale. That is a scale for soloing which perfectly outlines each chord. So let's take an A chord again, and two things we can do to make this more bluesy. Firstly, take off the little finger to make it a 7 chord, and secondly, hammer onto the G string for a minor to major feel. Now, with that in mind, let's focus on just the top 4 strings here. So from our chord, we can use all these notes on the 5th fret on the top 4 strings, plus this little hammer onto the 6th fret on the G string, but then we can also add all the notes of the 7th fret on those top 4 strings as well, which all come from the A major scale, so they're all going to work. So we've got this with the hammer on, and this. So I think of it as being like 2 bars with a little bridge in between on the G string. So that's our basic scale around the A chord, and we could play it like single notes like so. So this scale perfectly outlines the A chord, and we could play a lick something like this. Then when the progression moves up to the 4 chord of D, we can use the exact same scale shape and play a similar type of lick. And you'll hear we're now fully outlining the chord changes. You really hear that chord change happen, and then up again to E, back to A. See, we're really playing the changes now. Now this is hugely powerful as is, but let's just take it one step further. So we've got our 2 bars with our bridge in between, and let's go up 1 fret again, but just on the top 3 strings now. At the 8th fret we're going to bar across, and we find 3 blue notes we can add in if we want a darker flavour. So we can kind of reach out to those. Listen for how, as I get to those notes, it really darkens up. You hear that? And we can play things like that to give us a darker, bluesier flavour. So we've got our 2 bars with the bridge in between, and then our 3 blue notes, 1 fret above, just on the top 3 strings. Now without going into details, I can tell you that we've got all the notes we need here for the pentatonic, the blues scale, the Mixolydian and the Dorian, so this is immensely powerful. So let's hear a solo based on this blues chord scale. Watch out for how I shift each time the chord changes, and how I often play more than 1 note at once to really bring out the changes. Finally, I really want to encourage you to play completely solo, by which I mean no band and no backing track, as this really tests not just your musical knowledge and how you outline the harmony with your solos, but it also really puts a spotlight on your rhythm feel and how you can carry a performance. Just as an example, the solo you're about to see combines this classic bass line, this time in B flat, with some bluesy chords, and adds some great licks. Now, these individual elements might not seem that hard in their own right, but it's pretty challenging to keep everything flowing together. So thanks for watching, I hope that was useful. Don't forget the PDF guide on Patreon, but otherwise I'll see you in the next video.